When I told my husband I forgave him, I said it softly, like a whisper carried by wind. But in my heart, forgiveness wasn't what I offered him. It was a mirror polished and patient, waiting for him to finally see himself. That morning the sunlight came through the curtains in thin gold stripes, dancing across the breakfast table. The smell of burnt toast lingered in the air. His toast, always left too long in the toaster while he scrolled through his phone. He was smiling faintly at the screen, pretending to check work emails, but I'd already learned to recognize that kind of smile. The one you give to someone who isn't supposed to see it. I stirred my coffee slowly, letting the spoon clink against the cup like a clock counting down to something inevitable. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, his eyes still on his phone. "I did," I lied. I hadn't slept at all. I'd been lying awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing the faint hum of his phone in the dark, the message notifications he thought he'd silenced. The night before I had made my decision. I wouldn't confront him in anger. Not this time. I'd wait. I'd play my part. And I'd let him write his own punishment without even realizing it. Because sometimes silence is louder than screaming. Before all this, before the lies, the late nights, the hidden accounts, we were an ordinary couple. 15 years of marriage. 2 children. A house we'd both chosen on a quiet street with jacaranda trees that shed purple flowers every spring. He was the kind of man people trusted easily. Charming in public, dependable at work. Attentive enough to make other women say, "You're so lucky to have him." And for a long time I believed I was. We met in university. I was studying literature. He was in finance. He'd helped me balance my student loans, made spreadsheets for my savings, told me about investments. Back then it felt like love and security blended together. When we married, he took charge of our finances. I didn't mind. He was better at numbers and I trusted him. I worked part-time as a schoolteacher, spent afternoons helping our kids with homework, cooked dinners that filled our home with smells of garlic and laughter. Our life looked safe, predictable, solid, until the tiny cracks began to show. At first it was small things. He started locking his phone, keeping it face down. Then came the sudden business trips, the weekend calls from clients, the shift in his tone when I asked about our savings. He'd grown careful, too careful. One evening I remember sitting beside him on the couch while he typed something on his laptop. I asked, "Do you want some tea?" He minimized the screen so quickly his fingers shook. I didn't say anything then. I smiled, went to the kitchen, and made his tea with honey, his favorite. But inside me, something quiet began to wake up. It wasn't anger yet. It was curiosity. A woman's intuition that hums like static before a storm. A few weeks later, he told me he'd received a bonus from work. A large one. He said he'd already used most of it to pay off a pending loan. That night, after the kids went to bed, I asked him, "Which loan did you pay off?" I thought the mortgage was our only big one. He hesitated for a fraction of a second. "An old business loan. Don't worry about it." The next morning, while folding laundry, I noticed an envelope on his dresser. A bank statement from a branch we didn't use. It had his name but not our joint account number. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just held it in my hands for a while, feeling the weight of it. Later that day, I called the bank pretending to be him. I knew enough details to pass verification: his birthday, our address, his ID number, which I'd memorized years ago for insurance forms. And then I heard it, the quiet, practiced voice of the bank representative confirming, "Yes, ma'am, the account ending with 0932 has an active balance. Do you need to check the last transaction?" My breath caught. "No," I whispered. "No, that's fine." I hung up, and for a few minutes I just stood there, listening to the ticking clock on the wall. He had a secret account, not a shared one, not an emergency fund, a separate world of numbers and deposits I was never meant to see. At first, I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was for something harmless, a surprise, an investment, a backup for the kids. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The tone of his voice lately. The defensiveness. The way he avoided eye contact whenever I mentioned bills. That account wasn't just money. It was deceit in digits. That night, when he came home late again, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine, I sat on the sofa watching the rain slide down the windows. I didn't ask him where he'd been. I just said, "You look tired." And I meant it in every possible way. Tired of lying. Tired of pretending. He nodded absently, loosened his tie, and walked upstairs. When I heard the bathroom door close, I finally let myself cry silently, the kind of crying that doesn't shake your body but hollows you from the inside. Because betrayal, when it's not shouted, becomes something heavier. It sits behind your ribs like a stone. The next day, I woke up with a kind of clarity that scared me. It wasn't the clarity of forgiveness or fury. It was colder than that. A quiet resolve, like the way the sea looks calm before it drags something under. He left for work early as usual. His cologne lingered in the air, cedarwood and citrus, and I stood in the doorway for a long moment, staring at the space he just vacated. The smell of him used to make me feel safe. Now it felt like a disguise. I made myself coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. My hands trembled slightly as I typed the bank's name into the browser. I'd memorized the account number from the envelope, every digit etched into my mind from the night before. When the login page loaded, I hesitated. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat, waiting for me to decide what kind of woman I was going to be. I tried his usual passwords, the kids' birthdays, our anniversary. None worked. And then I typed the name of his mother, his password for everything sentimental. It worked. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Rows of transactions appeared, some small, others large, transfers, cash withdrawals, all from dates when he'd claimed to be working late. But one entry made my hands go cold. $12,800 transfer to Malik. I knew that name. She was the woman from his office, the one who always lingered at company events, laughing too loud at his jokes. The same one who'd hugged me once at a Christmas party and said, "You're lucky to have him, he's such a good man." I clicked on the transaction details again and again, as if the screen might change, as if it might tell me there was a mistake. But there wasn't. It was all there. The truth laid out in numbers and dates, mocking me in the plain, emotionless language of money. I felt sick. My hands were clammy, my heart thudded in my chest. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms to my face, but that didn't stop the tears from leaking through my fingers. He wasn't just lying. He was funding his affair, building a secret life piece by piece with our money. That night, I sat beside him at dinner like nothing had changed. He talked about his day, about how stressful things were at work, and I nodded, poured him more water, smiled faintly. Inside I was screaming. After the kids went to bed, he kissed my forehead and whispered, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And for the first time in 15 years, I realized I didn't know him at all. For the next few weeks, I lived two lives. In one, I was the same wife he thought I'd always been, patient, supportive, a little quieter maybe, but still there. In the other, I became a woman with purpose. I started reading about online banking systems, security settings, account recovery. I watched tutorials in the dead of night, learning how to change passwords and access recovery emails. It wasn't illegal, not exactly. Everything I touched was still ours. But it felt like walking a line between justice and sin. Each night, I rehearsed what I would say if I ever confronted him. But the truth was, confrontation would only give him control. I didn't want apologies. I wanted accountability. So I made my plan. One Friday evening, he told me he'd be working late again. I kissed him goodbye and watched him drive away. As soon as his car disappeared, I turned off the living room lights, sat at his desk, and opened his laptop, the one he thought I never touched. He had forgotten something simple. His autologin feature. With 2 clicks, I was back in his secret account. My hands didn't tremble this time. I moved with precision, calm, methodical. I changed the linked email to mine, set a new recovery phone number, and reset the password entirely. When the confirmation email arrived, I smiled faintly. Then I did something he'd never expect. I transferred every single dollar. Not into my personal account, but into our joint savings account. The same one he had neglected for months, the one meant for our children's college fund. When it was done, I stared at the screen. Balance $0. The number looked clean, almost pure. And then I logged out. That night, he came home smelling faintly of cologne and guilt. I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. He slipped under the covers quietly, as if not to wake me, but I could hear the faint tapping of his phone in the dark. A pause. Then another tap. And then a faint sigh, the sound of panic. He got out of bed, walked to the living room, and I could hear the frustration in his voice as he muttered, "What the hell?" I stayed where I was, eyes closed, heart pounding. He tried again. And again. I could hear the soft beeps of his phone, the disbelief growing louder with each failed attempt. A few minutes later, he came back to bed. He didn't say a word. I knew he wouldn't. He was too proud to admit something had gone wrong. The next morning, he was quiet at breakfast. His spoon clinked against the bowl like it was mocking him. He didn't look at me once. When he left for work, I watched him from the window. His shoulders were stiff, his pace quick. He looked like a man whose secrets were beginning to unravel, and he didn't even know how. Over the next few days, he grew restless. He made phone calls in whispers, left the house abruptly, came home agitated. One night he finally asked, "Have you seen any emails from the bank? Something's wrong with one of my accounts." I looked up from my book, pretending to think. "No, I haven't." "Why? Did something happen?" He rubbed his temples. "It's probably a glitch. I'll fix it." "Of course," I said, my voice calm. "You always do." He didn't catch the irony. A week later he confessed. Not about the affair, but about the account. "It's strange," he said, pacing the kitchen. "The bank says there's been a security update. They can't recover it without some verification details." "Oh," I said softly. "That must be frustrating." "It's not a big deal," he muttered quickly, but I saw the tension in his jaw. He was losing control and he knew it. But what he didn't know was that I wasn't done yet. That night, I opened the account again and renamed it. In the profile name section, I typed a single word, truth. Then I logged out, smiled to myself, and whispered the same words I'd told him weeks earlier. "I forgive you." But this time, I meant something entirely different. 3 weeks passed. On the surface, everything looked the same. Same breakfast table, same polite good mornings, same fake smiles. But beneath it all, something had shifted. Marcus was unraveling. He'd started drinking more. Not enough to seem like a problem, but enough to dull the edges. He'd stare at his phone longer, scroll through his messages, and frown as if searching for something that had vanished. The woman Amalek stopped calling. I know because one night after he fell asleep, I saw her name in his call log. Dozens of unanswered calls, then none at all. That's when I realized she must have figured it out too. He had promised her money, security, maybe even love. And now all of it was gone. For a moment I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered every lie he told me. Every time he kissed me goodnight while building a life somewhere else. And the pity turned to something colder. It was a Thursday evening when everything finally came crashing down. We were having dinner. The kids were upstairs doing homework. He was quiet again, stabbing his fork into the food without eating. Finally, he sighed and said, "Elena, can we talk?" The sound of my name in his mouth made my stomach twist. "Of course," I said softly, putting down my glass. He rubbed his hands together, eyes darting between me and the table. "I've been dealing with some financial issues," he started. "Someone hacked one of my accounts. I've been trying to recover it, but the bank is being ridiculous." I tilted my head. "That's strange. You're usually so careful with security." He swallowed. "Yeah, I don't know how it happened. I nodded slowly, holding his gaze. Maybe, I said. It wasn't a hacker. He froze. His eyes flicked up to mine. What do you mean? I leaned back, folded my arms, and smiled, the kind of smile you give when the game is already over. I mean, I said quietly. Maybe it was someone who finally got tired of being lied to. For a long moment there was silence. Then he whispered, Elena. Barely audible. I stood up, walked around the table, and placed the envelope, the same one I'd found weeks ago, in front of him. He didn't touch it. You forgot this in your drawer, I said. Funny how people hide the things they're most ashamed of in the places they feel safest. He opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were printed screenshots, his transactions, messages, photos, evidence. All of it. He stared at them, color draining from his face. How did you get this? Does it matter? I asked. What matters is what you did. He pushed the papers away. It wasn't what you think. Oh, don't, I snapped. Don't you dare insult me with that line. Do you think I'm blind? Or stupid? You moved money out of our business accounts to fund your little secret life. You took our family's trust and turned it into collateral for your betrayal. He stood, his voice rising. You went through my private accounts. That's illegal. I laughed. A low, bitter sound that didn't feel like it came from me. Illegal, I said. What you did to us should be illegal. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. You don't get to play the victim, Marcus. Not this time. He sank back into his chair, his face pale, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Elena, I made a mistake, he said finally. I was lonely. You were always so focused on the company, on Sophia's future. I just needed someone to make you feel powerful again. I finished for him. He looked away. You could have told me you were unhappy, I said, my voice cracking despite myself. You could have said something. But instead you turned me into a fool. You made me defend you to people who probably already knew. Do you have any idea what that feels like? He didn't answer. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. Steady, merciless. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small USB drive. I thought about destroying you, I said. About going public, sending this to the board, letting them see what their finance director really did. He looked up sharply. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, I said, voice calm. But I didn't. Not yet. I placed the drive on the table. Instead, I copied everything. Every transaction, every message. And then I put it in the company archive. Under your name. His mouth fell open. If I ever disappear, if anything ever happens to me, it goes straight to the board. Elena, please. I'm not threatening you, I said coldly. I'm protecting myself. He slumped in his chair, defeated. The man who once controlled everything, the money, the business, even my confidence, suddenly looked small. You win, he whispered. No, I said softly. There are no winners here. Only survivors. That night, he slept in the guest room. I didn't hear him cry, but I heard the silence, thick, heavy, full of regret. And for the first time in years I slept peacefully. Weeks later he moved out. Quietly. No lawyers, no drama. Just a man packing boxes of a life he'd already broken. Sophia asked where he was. I told her the truth. That sometimes, people make choices that take them away from the ones who love them. She nodded, too wise for her age. And then she hugged me and whispered, It's okay, Mom. You're enough. That was the first time I cried, really cried. Not from anger but from release. Months passed. The company thrived. Investors trusted me now, not him. Every time I walked into a boardroom, I carried myself a little taller. Not as the woman who'd been betrayed, but as the one who'd survived it. And sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that hidden account, the one I'd renamed Truth. Still existed. I never deleted it. I kept it as a reminder that no matter how clean something looks on the surface, there's always another layer underneath, waiting to be exposed. One morning I got a letter in the mail. No return address. No name. Just one line written in his handwriting. I hope one day you'll understand. I stared at it for a long time. Then, without hesitation, I fed it into the shredder. Because I already did. I understood everything. He wanted forgiveness to mean forgetting. But forgiveness, I'd learned, was simply this: letting go of the illusion that he ever deserved me. Closing voiceover for your video's ending scene. Betrayal doesn't break you. It introduces you to the version of yourself that no longer needs permission to be powerful. My name is Elena Vargas, and this is how I turned my heartbreak into freedom.